The title of this presentation is The Resounding Impact of Mother's Voice. How are you all doing? I want to engage with you through one test. But for the test, I need your help. Can you please help me? What I'm going to ask you is really easy. It's really simple. Here on the screen, you can see a math problem. The person I call on will come forward to solve and explain the math problem. Then who shall come forward? Yeah. Now your hearts must be beating faster. Boom, 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 boom. If I was to really call on you and ask you to come forward to solve the math problem, you might be a little stressed, whether the problem is easy or difficult. However, at that time, in that moment, what's going to be your option to relieve your stress? Maybe take some rest, get some well-needed rest, or eat some delicious food. Maybe exercise. Maybe listen to some relaxing music, or read an interesting novel. What would be your number one option to remove your stress? Everyone has their own way to handle their stress, to get rid of their inner stress. But today, I would like to recommend and suggest another way. Call your mother. According to a study conducted at Wisconsin-Madison University, observing the psychological stability of individuals, we can understand the influence of a mother's voice on her children. Leslie Siltzer, a biological anthropologist, she examined a group of children ages 7 to 12 with the impromptu speech and a series of math problems in front of a panel of strangers, just like I asked you to do. In that moment, the children's hearts were racing. Boom, 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 boom. They were so nervous. And the levels of cortisol soared through the roof. Cortisol is a hormone related directly with stress. Then the children were divided into 3 different groups. The first group was comforted in person by their mothers. The second group watched an emotionally neutral video. And the third group was handed a telephone. Guess who was on the line? Mom, yeah, their mothers. And the effect of their mother's voice was remarkable. So can you imagine the results? Of course, the first group who interacted with their mothers, they felt relaxed because their mothers was with them. But the third group, they were able to interact with their mothers through the phone. And they had virtually the same hormonal response as the first group. So the mother's voice played a dramatic role, and their levels of oxytocin, which is also known as a love hormone, it rose significantly. And guess what happened to the stress hormone? Cortisol, it vanished just by the mother's voice. Previously, it was known that when oxytocin is released, then in the context of social bonding, usually it required actual physical contact. However, just by the mother's voice, the same effect happened. Through this, we could realize the mother's voice itself makes us relaxed, makes us feel loved, just as if our mother is with us physically. So you may have expected that. But our mother's voice is doing more than just giving us psychological stability. It is doing more than that. So Stanford University, the School of Medicine, they studied about the brain's activity when they hear their mother's voice. Every child's mother in this study was recorded saying 3 words that are nonsense. The reason they had to use words that are nonsense is because if they use words that had meaning, then that would activate a whole different set of circuitry in the brain. So While scanning the children via MRI, the researchers, they gave a short clip of the recordings with the nonsense words to the children to listen to. Some recordings had the voices of their mothers, and some recordings had the voices of unrelated women. While this was taking place, they carefully observed the brain's reaction. And amazingly, the children could recognize their mother's voice with exceptional precision. Even though it was such a short clip that they listened to, even it was less than a second long, they identified their mother's voice with 97% accuracy. The results of the MRI were also amazing. The brain was activated so much by the mother's voice rather than the stranger's. So the mother's voice was doing so much for the brain. It was not only the primary auditorial cortex that was activated, which has to do with the auditorial senses, but the mother's voice was activating several different regions of the child's brain. The amygdala is one of them, which has to do with the emotion. It was affected and activated by the mother's voice. The mesolimbic pathway, reward pathway, and the prefrontal cortex was also affected by the mother's voice. And also the default mode network was also affected by the mother's voice. And there's other areas of the brain affected as well, such as the places in the brain that are dealing with processing and receiving the sights of faces. All these areas were affected and they were activated by the mother's voice. Even when the studies looked at how the children who were affected in all these areas of the brain, they had a better social communication skill when they were activated more by the mother's voice. So, reviewing these results, the lead author, Dr. Daniel Abrams, he said our mother's voice is helpful for not only the communication skills, but also our stability, also our ability to form personal relationships. When children spend more time with their mothers, they listen to their mother's voice more. Their mother's voice is making them develop successfully and also live in harmony with others. Like this, a mother's voice has a great impact and influence on us, human beings. Then is that only for our physical bodies? No, right? Yeah. So when we look in the Bible, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, it is written, if there is a natural body, there must be a spiritual body. And there are heavenly bodies as well as earthly bodies. Then we have an earthly body, but how can we receive the heavenly body from God? When we look in Revelations chapter 4:11 and Romans 1:20, it says, by God's will, all things were created. And God's invisible qualities, his divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. Or therefore, we can clearly understand how we can receive our heavenly body from how God allowed us our physical body. As you know, our physical mothers give our bodies life, but it's through a process of suffering, through the bloodshed in the pregnancy. So this pain that a mother goes through creates a bond with the child that lasts a lifetime. And the Bible also says in Galatians chapter 4, verse 26, the Jerusalem that is above is free, and she is our mother. She is whose mother? Our mother. Then we don't call any woman mother, right? We only call the woman that gives us birth our mother. Therefore, the woman that gives birth to our soul, she is the only one that is our spiritual mother. So the Bible clearly explains and testifies that just as our bodies are given life from our physical mothers, our soul is given life from our spiritual mother. So God created the earthly mothers by the heaven's will, so we can understand about our heavenly mother. So the first experiment we looked at was a scientific evidence that proves our physical mothers remove stress by their voice, even though we're living in this chaotic world, and they make us feel loved. Therefore, our heavenly mother, her voice removes and cleanses our soul from the pain caused by our sins and makes us feel loved. The second experiment, it identifies the fact that our earthly mother's voice holds the greatest impact on developing our life and us becoming, emotionally stable and overall good. This shows that our heavenly mother's voice has the greatest authority to transform, recreate us, and complete us by her every word. Considering all these things carefully, every personal problem can be solved when we listen and follow our heavenly mother's voice. Her voice rewires our brain. It recreates our soul. Then, according to scientific evidence, what does the world need to solve all the problems originating from a lack of communication and broken harmony? We need to hear our mother's voice. Truly, Heavenly Mother's voice resounds throughout all the universe. The Bible even foretells the day when the spiritual mother from heaven will come down to this earth. In Revelation chapter 21, verse 9, come. John was told, come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a mountain great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. The Bible depicts clearly and vividly the description of our Heavenly Mother coming down out of heaven to this earth. Then why does she need to come down to this earth? We need to hear her voice. So the Bible shows us our Heavenly Mother will appear on the earth in the flesh so that we could hear her voice. As if the biblical evidence was not enough, God has given us even scientific evidence so that we can realize why God told us our spiritual mother would come down out of heaven to this earth. So she has appeared in the flesh so we can hear her resounding voice that impacts us like no one else and changes us so that we could be saved and be her children. Therefore, in any moment, Heavenly Mother can make us, who are the least, the strongest, us who are the weakest, a mighty nation. When we know, when we obey, and when we absolutely believe our Heavenly Mother. In conclusion, it's an undeniable fact. We desperately need to hear our Heavenly Mother's voice as much as possible for the benefit of us and for the benefit of those around us. Then why does Heavenly Mother's voice have an unparalleled impact on us? As our physical mothers create an unbreakable bond with us through the painful suffering for 9 months, our spiritual mother from heaven recreates us through her hidden sacrifice for 6,000 years in order to complete us and make us into her children through her love, her entire love that she has given us through her words from her voice. Then is there any sound, any music, any voice that is better, more beneficial for us to hear than our Heavenly Mother's voice? According to the concrete evidence, I think this time you know the answer. Thank you, Heavenly Mother, so much for giving us your undying love and your patience through your sacrifice.